Peace, peace. Welcome to the Vault. Welcome to the Vault.com. You are now listening to your host Sharif Ali. Just want to thank you for tuning in live. Good day, good night, wherever you are in the world. Always appreciate, you taking the time to invest in your private education for you to, come together. So once again, you're listening to the Vault on High Frequency Radio Network. This is episode Put Yourself in Control with Private Citizen Status Correction. So we're definitely going to be going through a great amount of information tonight. You're listening to your host, Sharif Ali. Just want to start out as we always do, giving a big shout out and praise to the ancestors, the creator of the universe, my mother and my fathers, my grandparents for putting us in a position to come together. This show has, been broadcasted because I wanted to reach out to African indigenous descent people that want to be entrepreneurs or are entrepreneurs and really want to better themselves. So, I always wanted to reach out to our community first, but at the same time, I know that we have an eclectic base of listeners, and I always appreciate everyone, just showing the love and the support, because when you actually do take pride in where you come from and where you've been, it really does set this table for everyone else respecting you. So self-respect is the first respect, and just want to always thank the live listeners on the live stream via YouTube. Always want to thank the live listeners on Blog Talk. Want to thank you all for listening live. Also want to thank you all for listening in the archives. I know it's a ton of people that listen in the archives. They can't make the show live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 Central, and 5 Pacific Standard Time. But at the same time, they always listen. They always end up emailing us and, shouting out. And we do have the live chat going on right now on the YouTube. So if you want to click on that link, feel free to utilize that. But, always want to thank everybody for just, the support that we have, because this really is for us to come together and work together. And we have to be on the same accord when it comes to information. So, we're going to be going over Put Yourself in Control with Private Citizen Status Correction tonight. And I look forward to bringing that to you all. We're going to start out with the current event, or an announcement that we have, because we do have an event coming up in New Jersey. It is a private event. This information that we're talking about, we can't just say that we're private and give away our playbook in the public. There are certain pieces of information that we have reserved for individuals that want to be a part of our private community and grow together privately, because that is how wealth is held, privately. So we do emphasize that. We do have an event coming up on the 24th of June. We're getting down to the wire. It's actually a RSVP event, so it's not an event that you can just show up at the door. It is something that you actually have to, contribute and donate previous to the event, and we look forward to serving you all at this event. We're going to have a special guest at this event in particular. His name is Taj Tariq Bey, a very, very well-known individual in the community. Really proud and thankful that this individual is, able to serve, and we're able to have him serve at the capacity that he's able to do. So just really proud and thankful that we are able to connect with Taj. Taj is actually one of my childhood heroes. He's been a hero to a lot of brothers and sisters, and that's something that's really, really important. So, we thank everybody for for contributing to our lives. And so Taj is one of those individuals that's contributed to my life and other speakers that are going to be at the event with helping us with knowledge of self and taking self-respect and pride. And so we're definitely going to have Taj at this event. We're also going to have another business associate, Sodell. We're also going to have, Big Brother Yusufel at this event. And we're looking to present to you all, the private information that's going to help our communities pretty much take over their estates. Everybody's born with an estate, but a lot of people don't know how to manage it. And everybody has an estate. You have an estate. And so that's what we're here to really, help you get back into what we call, even a private citizen status and correction. And so this episode is apropos for us to move forward. And so, we're going to move forward in that respect, where we're working in unison as a community, because this information that we're talking about as far as private citizen status correction is facilitated through private people. They would not give out this information to the public and it wouldn't be in a communal based environment. Why? Because the whole is only as strong as its weakest link. And if you don't know how to maintain integrity, and if you don't know how to maintain privacy, then you won't be a part of the community too long. And you're not even going to get the information if you can't understand that from the beginning. So there's always a vetting process. You don't just get into a private community and not have a vetting process associated with you. So we definitely want to bring this in a very real manner, and I look forward to doing that tonight. So what is a private citizen versus a public citizen? It's real simple. Public has to do with the government. Private means you're non-government. That means you're not accepting a social security number anymore. You're not accepting handouts. When you are accepting handouts, you're considered a welfare recipient. If you're private, you don't accept handouts. You do for self. And self is your family. It's not just for your first name, it's for your last name. So that's a whole new thought process for most individuals because their family never had a family business. And now you got to ante up and start getting prepared to do family business again. You got to get back to where it was before the whole public debacle and everybody doing this whole public situation. You got to get back to focusing on building a family craft and a family skill and becoming a family expert. So is there a difference? There is a difference. Why? Here we go, brothers and sisters. You don't need Sharif Ali. You need the law. Everybody wants to call themselves law-abiding citizens, where you don't need to call yourself a law-abiding citizen. You just need to understand and know what privacy is all about so you can stay in your own domain because public and private don't mix. Here's the first law individuals need to understand because it's all about jurisdiction. Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution. If you go, even in the states constitution, Article 1, Section 10, what does it say? In paraphrase, because it's actually a decent size article and section, it says, no state can abridge the right to contract. No state can impair your obligation to contract. It's so critical, brothers and sisters. You got to be able to stay in control of your contracts. You've been signing contracts your whole life. You know what contracts are, but whose contracts have you been signing? Have you been creating private contracts that no state can impair the obligation of the contract? Article 1, Section 10. Or have you been signing what we know as adhesion contracts? ADHESION. It's called an adhesion contract. That means it's in favor of one party, the public. So there is a difference because on the private side, contract makes the law. You can Google that. Contract makes the law. When you're private, you create private contracts. When you're public, you're going into the public accepting any benefit and any handout that they give you. That's the difference between public and private. It's the contracts. People say, well, how can I put myself in position to be a private citizen? And I already know I'm going to get some flack from some people that are ignorant, meaning they don't know. They're going to say, well, how can you be a citizen in the private? You still have a law that you maintain and uphold. The private came before the public. We were all natural people before we were given a legal person, a legal name. You see, it don't call you by your natural name in the public. They don't call you by your natural name. They call you by your legal name because in the public it's legal. In the private it's natural. You can contract unlimited in the private. In the public, you're doing what? You got to deal with statutes, codes, and regulations. But for some odd reason, the people in the public, even these so-called politicians, they be like, well, this is what's going on in the private sector. Why talk about the private sector if you have no jurisdiction? If you're in the public. You want to know why? Because all your politicians are in the private. They own nothing, control everything. They know it's all about jurisdiction. Contract law is something that we got to study, brothers and sisters. You don't need to come to Sharif Ali and ask for all these consultations about how to protect your family. Family law is private law. So how do you expect the public to educate you if private citizen status correction is dealing with private matters? And your family, who was supposed to teach you and educate you on private information, is private. How do you learn it? You got to be a part of a private community. Otherwise, you ain't going to learn it. You got to invest in your private education. Used to always talk about this. I hope I didn't get away from it for my long-term listeners. I hope I didn't get away from telling people you got to invest in your private education. Do you see that the public education's free? Everybody knows ain't nothing good that's free. It comes with something. There's no such thing as something for nothing. So when it comes to individuals knowing about privacy, I know people say, oh, we're in the public. How do we know that it's going to be valid? If we're in the public, how do we know that our private is going to be upheld? I'm going to tell you how. Because the public, not only did they say that in Article 1, Section 10, they're not going to impair the obligation of contracts, they also said, guess what, people? We're going to create a thing called the Privacy Act of 1974. It's either 1974 or 75. The Privacy Act. So the public said we're going to create an act that honors the private. That's what it is. They honor it. It's just that simple, brothers and sisters. Are you able to maintain your privacy? How do you do that? You learn the law of contracts. Contract makes the law. No state can impair the obligation of contracts. It has to be so repetitive that you know that it's true. You can't let somebody tell you about your private rights. But in the public, they actually protect your rights. That's what they do in the public. They say, you know what? We're not going to take away our private rights. Why? Because everything starts in the private first. That's why they're telling you that. They just can't tell you that in the public. Why? Because it doesn't benefit them. People, I did this episode about how it was talking about, how an unincorporated business trust or a foreign trust is tax exempt. People say, how is it tax exempt? Because it's not in the public's jurisdiction. And they know this. And they don't have a problem with that. Why? Because all of these elite politicians are operating from blind trust. Go look it up. Go look up what a blind trust is. How it's a thing called plausible deniability. Well, I don't own it. That's what they say. I don't own it. Let's go ahead and get in right to the Trump situation. The Donald Trump. He ain't the only presidential candidate that said he don't pay taxes. All of them say that. On a certain party. There's other ones lying. Telling you to your face you live in a democracy. How do you live in a democracy when the Constitution that I'm quoting from right now and all the state constitutions ensures that all of the constitutions ensure a republic, not a democracy? They're two different things. This isn't a dictatorship. The president don't control nobody but his office. That's why he has a cabinet. That's the public for you. But when it comes to private, which they talk about in the public, you got to know how to research the private. Private citizen status correction means you operate from own nothing, control everything. You've been educated your whole life to own your car, to own your house, to own your shoes. Wealthy people know we ain't even supposed to own the clothes on our back. That's how it goes. This is a private education that you only get from a private family or a private community. Look at the Amish. They said we don't want to be in the public. They stay on their little private land. And they fine with it. So when brothers and sisters talk about wanting to start their own communities, they want to talk about going and being in the private, you got to own nothing. That's a hard principle to grasp for most people. Because they so used to being educated in the public and they don't know what's controlling the private. Here we go again. This is what's called controlling the private, brothers and sisters. Article 1, Section 10. Contracts. No state can impair the obligation of contracts. You have to go to the law library and learn how to write contracts. Just like the contracts that you and me would sign if you was going to cut my lawn, if you was going to do the plumbing, if you're going to do housework, if you're going to be my chef, I'm going to create a private contract with you. That doesn't involve the government. That doesn't make it a taxable event. That's why it's tax exempt. But most people don't know that. Why is it that Donald can sit there and say, I don't pay taxes? Because he doesn't own anything. How does he not own it? It's clear. You can look at his financial affairs. He has trust in place. What is a trust? A trust is a contract. It's that simple. But guess what, brothers and sisters? It's different types of contracts. It's over 80 different forms and styles of contracts. So which one do you pick? Once again, you got to be in a private community. You got to come to the private event. Oh, yeah, I'll give out the email real quick that everybody can email. You can either email HFRN, like Henry Frank, Robert Nancy, or High Frequency Radio Network, but it's HFRN period vault BAULT at gmail.com. Y'all can email us and we'll get you over to our department to forward you what you need to know as far as details for the event. Or you can go to admin, ADMIN, at welcome to thefoundation.com. So admin at welcome to thefoundation.com, and you all can inquire about the event. We do limited seating at these events. We don't need everybody. See, brothers and sisters, it's strength in numbers, but everybody ain't going to do it. I learned business at an early age. It's called the 80-20 rule. Everybody ain't going to do it. 80%, they ain't even going to care about going private. 20%, they going to step up and take control for their families. They going to invest in their private education. Which one you going to be? So that's the emails information to find out, what you need to find out about the event. But back to the matter at hand. You got to get into trust, brothers and sisters. And it's over 80 forms of contracts. So how you going to know what type of contract to deal in? You got to get into a private community, a private association, a private family. Otherwise, you don't get this information. And what benefit do private people have to give it to public people? I'm going to tell you why Sharif Ali is sitting in front of you all right now, giving you all what I know is imperative. I give it to you all, brothers and sisters, because I love my people. And I already know. See, we come from the philosophy of I'm my brother's keeper. That's our law in our private community. I'm my sister and brother's keeper. We don't forsake our brothers and sisters because they don't know. In privacy, though, there is secrets. So, yes, there are pieces of information that are not going to be displayed to the public. We're not giving away our private playbook in the public. That's the facts. But at the same time, where are 98% of our people at? They in the public. They got social security numbers. A social security number is just a business transaction number. It's a number you do business with so you can file a tax report. That's it. That doesn't say that you can't do private deals. It doesn't say that at all. So you could do private deals without a social. But if you want to go into the public and you private, you got to have an EIN. It's just that simple. You can't be in someone else's domain and not operate by the rules. Now, what do they say in the public about privacy? They say, we will not impair the obligation of your contract, no matter how unreasonable it is. That's critical. No matter how unreasonable. I can show you all case law privately. That if you ever get pulled into their jurisdiction, you got to know how to maintain privacy. You got to let them know, well, guess what? In the public, you guys don't really want to adjudicate against private people, private citizens. Why? Because if you do, then you're saying the individuals that wrote these laws that were private first, that you compromising their integrity. That's the best part about being rich. Is you private. You're not public. Donald told you he don't pay taxes. Why? Not because he's not doing taxable events as a businessman. It's because he owns nothing. He doesn't have a social to use. He's not utilizing a social. He's utilizing an EIN. How did he get that information? He learned it from a private family. He learned it from a private community. And guess what? They hang in the same circles. So while they sitting on the air, while these politicians are sitting on TV and telling you, oh yeah, I'm going to cut the taxes for the elite. Wow, what difference does it make? They all in trust. Of course they're going to cut the taxes. They're cutting they're going to create a tax burden for people that are public, that are making tons of money. That's what happens. If you public, you using your social to make $1 million, you going to get hurt. If you private and you don't own nothing, it don't matter anyways because your trust owns it. That's how it goes. So it's just that simple. So when you say, oh, how does it work where, I have these private contracts in place? I'm going to tell y'all straight up because ain't nobody going to tell you this. You're going to sit in the public your whole life. You're going to go down to the Secretary of State and you're going to open up some public corporation, and you're going to get taxed, and you might even turn into a sole proprietor, a disregarded entity. It's a glorified employee. You got your social tied to it. A social security number is for employees. That's why you need it for a job. If you're an entrepreneur, you can create a company, or you can create a trust, or a trust can be created that you utilize that utilizes a EIN, an employer identification number. That puts us immediately in a position to employ our people. You have to be an employer first. You can't be an employee. You got to be an employer. You got to go get an employer identification number. That's how you operate. It's that simple. So you get an employer identification number with your trust or with a trust, because see, the issue is, brothers and sisters, when people come into this knowledge, they think they're going to own a trust. They think that they're going to have a living trust or a grantor type trust. We don't operate out of those type of trusts because you're not supposed to own it. You're supposed to control it. Remember, it's private strategies that we're utilizing. So what you're looking to do, you're not going to just be giving the keys openly. Oh yeah, here's the strategy. It's own nothing, control everything. So it's not your trust. I don't need to own the trust. I need to control it though. I need to control the assets that are inside of it as a trustee for the benefit of the beneficiaries. And that's another thing is that brothers and sisters think when they get in a trust and these type of entities, they think that it's all about them. But we already instructed you all on the public side, you can use fringe benefits. Well, on the private side, all you got to do is write into the contract that it can take care of the trustee. It can take care of your clothing. It can take care of your food. It can take care of your haircuts. It can take care of you doing everything for you. Why? Because the trust is a business. The trust has to take care of the trustee. That doesn't mean you need to pull down a salary with a social. Commingling the public to the private. Where did that social come from? It came from the public. That's public citizen status. So how do you stay in the private? How do you maintain your private citizen status correction? You get into a vehicle that is private from the beginning, because the way you start is the way you finish. You got to maintain privacy the whole way through. That means you ain't got no social no more. You know that you're natural. You're natural now. You're not illegal. You're not legal. You're natural. You have a natural name. That's perfectly fine. You got a natural name, so you're private. You got a contract in place. That's private. It wasn't created under the state. The state didn't create your entity, and they don't give your entity validity either. How can they give your entity validity? That means you're public. It's domestic. It's state created. Y'all can sit here and talk, or y'all can sit here and say, you know what? A public entity, a state-created entity, those are all domestic entities. That means you got to go to the state to say, is this legal or not? But inside of the Constitution that the states are under and the federal, they say what? We're not going to impair the obligation of your contract. They respect your right to contract. That's why this is so critical. And they will not abridge it. That means they won't come in and say certain things about it. They respect it. Why? Because the elite are already doing it. How can they go against your particular trust or your particular contract? And how can they go against your contract? How can they do that? How can they come in and abridge your contract? That means that, bam, you're going to create a new precedent. And this is another critical point. We utilize common law. Why are we utilizing common law? Because common law is international law. People won't tell you that. They think, oh, I could write one in Moorish law. I could write it in this foreign law. No, you have to write it in common law. Because we're talking about helping you all get to a position where you can utilize your contract internationally without any hindrances. Because there is a thing called the United Nations Convention on Trust, which they have the Hague Convention, and they say we respect this common law trust to come into many different jurisdictions. They respect it. So, if they respect your right to contract, and we're utilizing the common law, and we can go into multiple jurisdictions, they wouldn't create a thing called president. Not the president of like a figure, but an actual president. That means that it's an actual, a monumentous event. A new current event. So they're not going to create something that you can end up using against them in court. They keep those laws in favor of privacy, in favor of private contracts, because they're operating the same way. They're utilizing trust, which is a contract. Mitt Romney said the same thing when he was running against Obama. He said, yep, I don't pay taxes. I don't have to release my tax records. Why? Because he does not have any public personal tax records. The tax records are private. And do trusts have to file taxes? Yes, they do. But he doesn't own it. He's in a trustee position. That doesn't mean he owns it. That means he has a fiduciary responsibility. As a private citizen status correction, you move into the position of fiduciary now. Just like you in the fiduciary capacity for your social security number or for the public social security number, now you're in a fiduciary capacity to maintain your privacy and maintain growing the trust. It's a separation of assets. You know the difference between legal and natural. You can never be in commerce. That's called slave labor. Because if you don't pay up on a debt, that means somebody could put you in a debt camp. That's slave labor. They can't do that. So what do? They contract with your social that you agree that you're going to use, and then you in the public and you're utilizing a public number. Well, guess what? They don't throw you in jail. They throw the public social in jail. Because if you in jail, it's considered civil death. Do you see what civil's dealing with contracts? It's civil. Dealing with contracts. When you go to civic court, like Judge Judy and the other one, what's the Judge Judy and Judge Joe Brown? Those civil court. That's dealing with contracts. Is there a contract in place? Then they try to say they gave people civil rights. That means they gave them contractual rights. But we already had contractual rights. Because you're natural. Once they abridged and allowed people to what they call to become a citizen, which means now you can contract with the public more openly, you have to agree to that. You don't have to agree to that. You can stay private. So that's why it's considered to be a private citizen status correction. Why? Because you're utilizing your private rights. That doesn't mean that you're not a part of the whole. You're a part of the whole. Why? Because you're not supposed to be in the public doing fraudulent stuff. You're supposed to be, for the benefit of the public. You're not supposed to be in the public doing things that's going to hurt the public. That's the facts, brothers and sisters. So there is a citizen means you're just a part of a whole. I know people might have an issue with that. Oh, it's a citizen. I'm under their control and I'm a subject. No, you're not a subject. How somebody going to control you when they didn't create you? Wake up. Ain't nobody controlling you. You letting yourself be controlled. It's time to take mental control of yourself and not have somebody else giving you their opinion and telling you one thing or the next. It's you to invest in your private education, your private family education, because family law is private law. Contract law is private law. That's how you correct your status privately. People say, oh, I want to go to the public. I want to go to the private, and I'm in the public. You got to learn contracts. You got to learn how to put contracts in place for yourself. That's what you got to learn how to do. Do we educate people on how to do that? Yes, we do. You can contact us, hfrn.vault@gmail.com. You can contact us, and we will help you because that's what it's all about. It's about privacy. It ain't about being in the public. The public is charity. Everything about the public says we're going to take from the private and give to the public. That's what they do in the public. What does the public create? The government takes handouts and gives handouts. There's a difference between voluntary capital and involuntary capital. The government collects involuntary capital. That's why they get their cut first. That's public. Private means you create private contracts. Who gets their cut first in the private? Who gets their cut last? who might not even get their cut at all. And how is it their cut? It ain't their cut. The only reason they getting the cut is because people have signed on the contract saying, I agree to give you the first share of my plot. For what benefit? For what benefit, brothers and sisters? Y'all all know how Social Security's looking. Y'all all know how these public programs are looking. Y'all know how the country's looking as far as it being in debt. Y'all know how it's going. How long can you operate in debt and survive? Let's get real here. That's the issue, is that people are okay with accepting handouts. If you don't want to accept a handout, you want to put yourself in control with a private citizen status correction, you got to get into a private community, and you can contact us. You can get to our private event that's coming up on June 24th, and you can learn how to start maintaining your privacy, learning how to go private. It's about maintaining your privacy. It's nothing more, nothing less. And you see how I'm saying it? You have to maintain it. That doesn't mean you gave it away. You just got to maintain it now. You got to get back in a position of knowing thyself. You got to know you're a natural man before you're a legal man or a legal woman. You got to know you're natural first. So when Noble Drew Ali, one of the leaders, the late greats, he said, do business in your new name. That means that you have new knowledge of self. And now you can say, okay, I know myself. I'm natural. I'm not a legal person. Because a legal person is an actual person. It has the same capabilities of you. It can buy and sell a whole property. It can create contracts. That's the difference. Public versus private citizens. Own nothing, control everything. That philosophy has to permeate your family. Own nothing, control everything. And while everyone else wants to own, because ownership equals liability, guess what? They'll be liable for everything. Every time you own something, you liable for everything. Because you own it. How can you own something you didn't create? That's why it's so important to get to the point that I really want to get to, which is you have to have a contract in place to protect your privacy. If you all want to know what a quality non-disclosure agreement looks like, because that's what you have to have in place first. You got to have a non-disclosure agreement. A private contract that says, what me and you talk about, what me and you do, no state's going to come in here and make us speak. We don't have to speak because we can share with them, whoever's trying to come outside of this contract, we can share with them that we have a private contract in place. That's the least we going to do. And that's the most we going to do. And the state's going to say, or the public's going to say, well, it is a private contract and it is a contract, so we actually will not impair the obligation of that contract. If you can't speak, you can't speak. It's the same thing with a lawyer. They have a what? Non-disclosure agreement. They have a client confidentiality agreement. Same thing with doctors. These are confidentiality agreements. No state can come in and say, well, you need to tell us what you talked about with your client. That's private. That's how you get into putting yourself in control with a private citizen status correction, because you learn how to create private contracts. A non-disclosure agreement. If y'all want a quality sample private non-disclosure agreement, y'all can email me at hfrn.vault@gmail.com. That's critical, brothers and sisters. I so love helping my brothers and sisters protect their intellectual property, because we as a people have gotten ripped off by not even being able to utilize contracts the entire time we've been in the United States. And on the back end of that, being able to actually know how to protect our ideas. You have to have non-disclosure agreements. You don't need to be sharing your ideas with everybody. Oh, I'm going to share my idea with my closest friend. Yeah, right. Until somebody steal your idea. That's the facts. I tell people all the time, don't tell me your idea. Why? Because if I use your idea, you can't be mad. Because we didn't sign a non-disclosure agreement. That's all you got to do. It's that simple. But for some odd reason, it's so hard for people to maintain control over their private contracts, over their private ideas that came out of your mind. That's privacy for you. That's private citizen status correction. It's having a non-disclosure agreement in place. That's what it's all about. You got to have a private non-disclosure agreement in place to protect anybody that you're doing business with. So when you want to take your fancy idea for your clothes, for your intellectual property, I love helping brothers and sisters protect their intellectual property, their ideas, the things that were given to you from the Creator. And you want to go into the public, you better have a non-disclosure agreement in place. You better have a private contract in place. You got to have it. If you don't have it, you have no protection. Why? Because no state can impair the obligation of contracts. So if you don't have a contract in place, that means you don't have a contract in place. That means anyone can take your idea. And y'all can't tell me y'all don't know that all the rich people in this country have taken people's ideas. Why? Because those people didn't have contracts in place. So they just took the idea. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. You start doing research on all these individuals, they took other people's idea. Facebook was a stolen idea. Y'all just saw one of the most recent ones where people, because they didn't have a private non-disclosure agreement in place, Zuckerberg took their idea. Y'all seen the movie Social Network? If you haven't seen it, go look at it. The whole first part of the movie is talking about not having a non-disclosure agreement in place. He supposedly stole their idea. And they settled, because that's what happens, because there is a level of stealing. But it wasn't stealing. That's why he still maintains control over the idea. Because he went to the lawyers, and he got up on it, and he did what he needed to do. And now y'all see, I'm going to go through his story for y'all, because now y'all see how we created a company in the public, which I think is in the public, is private. It's a privately owned corporation. What did he do with his wealth? He took his wealth and he put it inside of another private entity, another tax shelter that wealthy people use. He put it into a private charity. He don't own it, remember? He controls it. You think he's not in control of the charities? He's in control of the charities. But all y'all, or people in general, want to go out and get some nonprofit. They want to go out and get some charity in the public, under the state's jurisdiction. And I understand why, brothers and sisters, because that's the education that's put out in the public. But if you want to have a private citizen status correction, you got to get into a private community. You got to get around a private family. And the family has to trust you. Why? Because they deal in trust only. They don't own anything. They deal in trust. So they have to trust you. This is going to foster our community trusting each other again. It creates transparency. You got to be able to maintain your privacy. How do you maintain your privacy? In trust. You got to be private. You got to have trust in your community. You got to trust one another. Ain't no backbiting. It's love. It's trust. It's contracts in place, holding people accountable. People stepping up to the plate and taking responsibility for what is it that they supposed to do. But they also have a level of, I don't own it. I just need to control it. I need to control my attitude. I need to control my work ethic. I need to control my student mentality so I can keep growing the assets for the trust. Y'all think these politicians is paying taxes because they in the public. They all rich. They in the public. Y'all getting upset with one politician over the next politician. All of them use blind trust. All of them have private foundations. All of them. But you want to stay in the public? That's your choice. Have a great journey. I can also read the stats on that too. Out of 100, 65% of the people will end up dead or dead broke by the age of 65. 65. 6 out of 10 people you know that you went to high school with, they're going to end up dead or dead broke. Let me get to, I can actually read the stats off for you because I like the stats. Let me read the stats off for you. I like the stats. Where the stats at? Oh, all right. I got it wrong. 65 aren't going to be dead broke. 54 are going to be dead broke. And I'm going to read the actual source that I got this from because it's a public source because they're charting your life. They're charting your life. 55% are going to be dead, broke. 30% are going to be dead. 5% by the time they reach the age of 65 are going to still be working. 4% are going to be financially secure, and 1% are going to be financially independent and wealthy. Why do you think the 1% has this information? Because it's private. We already know that 60 to 30% of them, they were all educated in the public. They all got public educations. Guess where I got this information from? The Bureau of Statistics and the Department of Social Security. That's not Sharif Ali for you. That's the Bureau of Labor and Social Security Administration. You can go look that up on the internet. Google that. So when it comes down to it, brothers and sisters, I understand that, it's a challenge out here to be in the public, and a lot of people say, I want to maintain my privacy. I just want to be left alone. I don't want to be in the public. I don't want to have to deal with these statutes, codes, and regulations. You got to get into the philosophy of own nothing, control everything. That's the first principle. Otherwise, you're going to go into the private and think that you own in the trust. How you going to own the trust? That means it's a grantor type trust. That means that you didn't really give up rights. That's a living trust. That's what happens, brothers and sisters. You got to get in a position of own nothing, control everything. It needs to be more about your family name than your first name. It's got to be a contract in place. It's got to be an NDA in place, a non-disclosure agreement, a non-circumvention. It's got to be that in place. I want to go private. That's what they say. Oh, I got me a 9-8 number. I got me a private trust. So whose trust is it? That's the first question I'm going to ask you. Whose trust is it? If you don't know how to answer that correctly against Sharif Ali, what you think the IRS going to do? They're going to eat you alive. You own it? I thought you were the trustee. Well, I don't own it. See how you got yourself in a bind? Guess what? You can't lie. They can. They can ask you who owns it. And because you're not trained, guess what? You're going to say the wrong thing, and they say they can and will hold it against you. They can and they will. They ain't got an option. They looking to build a case. Why? Because they want you to be in their jurisdiction. It's all about jurisdiction. Are you in the public or are you in the private? How do you stay in the private? You got to have contracts. Private citizen status correction deals with you putting contracts in place. I'm going to end on this one more point because I know a lot of brothers and sisters are out here dealing with the UCC. And the Uniform Commercial Code is the law that's governing contracts in the United States, and it's actually international as well in scope. ICA. A lot of y'all don't know. I know this stuff. I don't need to talk about it. Why? Because I'm in the public. There's certain things that we should be talking about, and there's certain things that we not. We need to be talking about maintaining privacy. We could talk about that. Why? The public talks about it. They say, oh, yeah, the private sector, this is how the private sector is doing, and this is how the private sector is going. So I'm letting y'all know that it really is a private sector. There really are private citizens. People walking around that don't deal in socials. They actually deal in EINs. They own nothing, control everything. That's what's going on in front of your eyes. They utilize a trust in front of your face telling you they don't pay taxes. And people was upset. Then people want to go to the UCC. Oh, the UCC is public. Yeah, it's the public law governing contracts. You need to get into it. Why? Because it's the law governing contracts in the public. So if you got a private entity that's dealing in the public, now you have a public law that you can utilize because they respect your right to contract. And they respect it to the point where they're not going to abridge it or impair it. So yes, the UCC has some validity. It's the law of contracts in the public. It's public contract law. Uniform Commercial Code. It's in each state. Each state got their own law, but they still consent overall to all the laws because they're uniform. That's why it's called Uniform Commercial Code, because each state was having an issue with contract status. Why? Because they can't really impair it. They didn't have a uniform law on it. So they created that in 1954. 55. Y'all can Google it. Some people might say 56, 57. It still was in the 50s. Right around the whole civil rights issue. Because each state, one state was saying, oh, well, we're not going to let the so-called colored people do this. And the other state said, well, it's perfectly legal. They can create businesses here. So they had to create a uniform commercial contract law, and that's called UCC. So if you're scared of it, then you're scared of knowing how to contract and maintain your privacy. The UCC protects your privacy, whether you know it or not. The Privacy Act of 1974-75, it protects your privacy. It's contract law. But people want to sit here and say, oh, Brother Sharif, the UCC, a lot of brothers and sisters, they be having issues with that type of stuff. They be getting into trouble with that type of stuff. Yeah, they do, because they don't know contract law. That's why. Because they going off what they seen in the public. And I just told you all that you are not going to learn private status correction in the public. You have to be a part of a community, because you don't want to get half of the knowledge. You don't want to get parts of the knowledge. Some people like doing that. I'm not that guy. I invested in my private education. I have private mentors. We have private relationships. I'm a part of private families and part of private communities. It's that simple. Now, if you want to stay in the public and think that some public education is going to give you what you need, then have fun. In the private communities, we come with the truth of own nothing, control everything. So why are we even sitting here talking to you then? Because you think you're supposed to own everything. You think you can be in the public and get a public education and be fine. The public is welfare. The private is self-sufficiency. That's the difference. What's going to be your game? So, brothers and sisters, the UCC is something that I highly recommend you all get a grab on. Each state has its own copy. Y'all can print that off. It is extensive, but it's letting you know about the law of contracts. We got brothers and sisters scared about reading a book and knowing their own private rights. You have private rights before you have public rights, and the public is just protecting your private rights. They don't want to abridge your contracts. Why? Because they got contracts themselves. When I say they, I'm talking about the elite, the people that you are having an issue with in the public, saying, oh, well, Donald's not paying taxes. He needs to show him. He ain't got nothing to show. But then the other party, because it's a party situation, the other party wants to sit here and say, well, we're gonna lower taxes for the lower and middle class. They got blind trust too. They got foundations and charities too. That's private. Go check their rap sheet. You want to know why? Because one party, when y'all really get down to it, one party fought a war to keep us enslaved, and the other party, they didn't. But have we forgotten about that? The parties have changed now. Ain't nothing changed. One of them still trying to give out handouts so you can still become a public servant. The other one says, practice self-sufficiency. We ain't going to impair the obligation of your contracts. That's what one of them saying. We maintain your privacy. We'll actually allow you to create private contracts in your private communities. They will allow you to do it because they doing it themselves. That party. But the other party on the other hand telling you, oh yeah, well, we're just going to lower the taxes for the lower middle class. And, the upper class, we're going to raise it up on them. Who's in their class? Are you public or are you private? That's the question. Do you own everything or do you want to control it? That's how we're going to take our rightful place back in commerce, brothers and sisters. We're going to have to get into vehicles that facilitate privacy, that facilitate transparency. That's what we got to do. We got to get into a position of own nothing, control everything. Because as soon as you got your name on it, you become a target. As soon as you own it, you become liable. If y'all want to get a quality sample of an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, y'all can email me, hfrn.vault@gmail.com, and we could send over a quality sample for you so you can know what it's like to have a quality non-disclosure agreement. You got to have a non-disclosure agreement to protect your ideas, brothers and sisters. I'm not a fan of you all just going out and doing whatever you want to do in the public and then end up losing your intellectual property. It's all about maintaining your privacy. I respect your privacy. How about you maintain your own privacy? Respect your own privacy. That's what it's all about. It's about maintaining your privacy. So I look forward to connecting with y'all brothers and sisters, and building with you all in a private manner, because that's what it's all about. It's about maintaining your privacy. Private citizen status correction is all based off of you getting into a private community and maintaining privacy through private trust. So I'm going to open up the phone lines. I instruct you all to, you all can call into the number. I know we got people listening live on YouTube. Shout out to everybody listening live. We always appreciate you all, at HFRN, High Frequency Radio Network, at the Vault, on the stream. I know we're streaming live right now, and you all can ask us questions at 424-222-5250. If you have any questions, I'm going to open up the floor to people asking questions about the private citizen status correction. I know, brothers and sisters, that a lot of this information, when it comes to the private, how to put yourself in control with the private citizen status correction, it comes down to brothers and sisters really dealing with a UCC. A lot of brothers and sisters have dealt with it from the Uniform Commercial Code aspect, and that's all well and good. But if you don't know the law of contracts from a private perspective, you dealing with the public perspective on contracts, you're bear hunting with a buggy whip. It don't work that way. You got to be a part of a private community. I can't overemphasize that, because I understand. I know our people. Our people they are prideful. They prideful. But guess what? If y'all understand what the word pride means in animal terms, that means you run in packs. You run in communities. You have to have a private community, a private family. That's privacy for you. So I appreciate you all for tuning in live. I appreciate you all for listening in the archives. I'm going to open it up for questions. We're going to go ahead and open it up. You all can press 1. And we'll open it up for some questions and move forward tonight. So if you all want to ask some questions, you can press 1-424-222-5250. If you all want to find out about the event we have coming up on June 24th, you all can email us at hfrn.vault@gmail.com and learn about the private community. I came on the air to do this. This is why I'm out here. It's for my people. It's to understand that it's about privacy. Everybody tells you to go own a business. Go own the business, Johnny. Yeah, we owning businesses. And that's why those businesses are being taxed the way they are. Because ownership equals liability. If you own it, you will be taxed for it. If you don't own it, you can't be taxed. Why do you think these wealthy people don't have issues? Because they don't own nothing. So it's not really like the government's coming after them. But people like Wesley Snipes, he owned it all. Lauryn Hill, they owned it all. Why you think the elite, when they get to a certain level, don't have those issues? They don't have those issues because they're maintaining their privacy. They have private contracts in place because they get into the communities, they get into the country club. And they learn about privacy. And once they learn about it, they ain't going to be telling their public friends no more. Why? Because it doesn't benefit them. They don't need a compromising party involved in their life. It's about maintaining privacy at that point. That's the difference. We're going to open up the line. We're going to go into the first caller. 650-3356. For all of everybody on YouTube, I'll repeat the question and we'll go forth from there. So, brothers and sisters, 650-3356. Peace, you're on the line with Sharif Ali on the Vault on High Frequency Radio Network. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Peace, Sister Terry. Hey. Right. It clearly is a distinction. Yes, because okay, so once again, in the public, the UCC is the law that governs contracts in the public. But when you look into the Constitution says no state can impair the obligation of contracts. That's why they call it private, because There are things called private contracts. That's why they have private corporations. That's why they have private charities, because they're private. So you don't really know what's inside of the contract. You only know what they allow to be released to the public. So it is beneficial to go to the law library and pick up public books on contracts. Why? So you can start seeing what contracts look like. That's the first level of information is seeing what contracts look like, seeing what you can and can't do. But guess what? The state said that they can't impair it. So it don't matter how unreasonable the terms are in the contract, they can't impair it. So it's good to pick up those books. I pick up those books and because I love giving them out to brothers and sisters when they first come into the knowledge, so they can see, okay, they can see the difference. Because, most of us have been instructed our whole life in the public. They've been given a public education. So when you get into the private, you don't really see that much information. Why? Because private people didn't release it and they have no intentions on doing it. It's private. So how do you know? You get into a private community, you learn privacy, and then you can look at the public information and really see a contrast. You can see, okay, there's a difference between public and private. Then you can recognize what's public and what's private, what's necessary, what's not necessary. That makes sense? Thank you. Is that the only question you have? Okay. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll be on the air I usually do 2 hours every week. So, but yes, I'll keep you on the line. And if you have a question, just unpress one and then press one again, and I'll pull you back in. And we'll go from there. But I definitely appreciate your question about, getting public contract books, because if you're in the public and you already in the public, you still need to know how public contracts work. So I don't just tell people go get a public contract book. I tell them to really get into the UCC, because that's the law governing contracts. And everything that you sign your signature on is a contract. If you ain't signing it in the public, then it ain't a contract. So once you sign it, then it's a contract. You're giving your word. Your word is your bond. And then when you read UCC, go ahead. So when you sign with UCC 1-308, what happens is it says that you're explicitly reserving your rights. Well, what rights are you reserving? Are you reserving your public rights that have been given to you via the public, or are you reserving private rights? Your private rights are upheld when you have a private contract. So yeah, you can reserve your rights, but what rights are you reserving? That's the issue that I've been telling individuals when it comes to them using the UCC. You still need to have a private contract, a private agreement in place between what? You and the public person, the legal fiction. That's what it is. That's not rocket science. It's just, to an individual that's uneducated or uninformed, they think that, oh, I'm just going to reserve my rights. Why? You don't even have a private contract protecting your private rights. So how are you going to protect your privacy if you're in the public talking about, I'm protecting my private rights? You ain't got a private contract in place. You got to have a private contract in place first. Then you go into the public, and then you can reserve your rights. Why? Because you're not reserving public rights. You're reserving private rights. That's what they don't want to tell you, because they don't benefit for telling you to reserve your private rights. They're in the public. It's not their jurisdiction. Not necessarily. I wouldn't say the EIN protects you, because that's a public number as well. That's not necessarily where I don't put any EINs down on anything like that. No, granted, the number represents the legal person, but that's for the IRS. When it comes to you going and doing a corporation, for example, if you're going to take a private corporation or a private trust, and it's going to create a public corporation, you just put the private trust name on there. You don't put the private 98 number or private trust number on a document. They can't read that. They don't know what that means in the public. The public, remember, the state is separate even almost from the federal level. That's why you get a federal EIN. So when you get that when you have your private trust and it goes and creates the public corporation, you just put the private trust name on there, and that's the owner. And that private trust may have a 98 number or EIN number. Then okay, that's fine. And so when that trust is reserving its rights, it puts the name of the trust and it reserves its rights. Why? Because it has a private contract in place, because the trust is a private contract. So it's reserving its rights. That's simple. But I always encourage brothers and sisters not to do this by themselves. Like, I was there. I wasn't always there by myself because I had mentors. This is what privacy does. It facilitates us getting back to apprenticeship and mentors. It doesn't say, let me go out here and gun-ho it. Because if you go out there and gun-ho it, who's going to protect you? Who's going to come help you when you get into a jam? Your family ain't studying with you. Your friends barely studying with you. Who you going to help? Who going to help you? Who's going to help you truly know all the hours that you put in? The people that you're working with, the private community. So we're definitely going to make it a point to come out to Cali this year. High Frequency Radio Network, and so that, yeah, because we're definitely gonna come out, and we're doing our best to have an event in Cali, because we have a great audience, and we have a great base of people out in Cali that are building a private community. It's nothing wrong with that. The state is not going to impair your obligation to build a private community. It's just, do you know how to build it? That's it. If you know how to do it and maintain your privacy, you'll be fine. So UCC 1-308 is a code that's in the public that protects your privacy. It's sort of like saying no state will impair the obligation of contracts. Well, it says, okay, we're going to allow you to reserve your rights. But what rights are you reserving? That's the biggest issue. And I always want to emphasize that to people. What private contract with your private rights are they stated? Do you even have a private contract that states your rights in the private? Because private comes before public. So they're not giving you rights in the public. They're protecting your rights. It says right there that you can reserve your rights, but what rights are you protecting? And do you have it expressed on paper? Do you have it written out in a contract? These are my rights. I have the right to travel. That's a big issue. I have a right to travel, but you don't have a private contract in place stating that with your natural to your legal. That's why they having issues. It's because they don't have a private contract in place. So even when they sign UCC 1-308, they don't have any private contract that they will be able to paraphrase or pull out in short and say, this private contract between this natural person and this legal person, they're not, one's doing business and one is not. And you have to prove that this individual is doing business. These are the type of things that you have to have in place that facilitates privacy. That's it. See, sister, this is the issue. I'm gonna tell you how I was instructed. This is why I've been instructed the way I've been instructed. I'm gonna tell you this. You can go look this up. Treaty law is treaty law. Contract law is contract law. They don't mix. They're two different things. That's how I was instructed. That's why I don't mix the two. You don't see me pushing the religious aspect. Why? Because the United States already said they respect it. So why would I need to push my religious affiliation? That makes you a target. I told you, you got to maintain privacy. They already tell you, look, we're going to let you practice your religion. Just do it privately. When you come into the public, you might be a target. That's what they saying to you. We don't need to know your nationality in the public. Why? Because that's making you a target. Are you a belligerent? Are you some type of like threat now? Why do you need to tell us that? Maintain your privacy. Maintain your moral status privately. Maintain your whatever status you're looking to maintain privately. That's why it's called private citizen status correction. That means you own nothing, control everything. You control your identity privately. You don't need to be giving everybody your identity publicly. So you create private contracts in place of that. It's a disclosure agreement. It's a need to know basis. They don't need to know your religion. They tell you that. They don't need to know certain things. But people feel like they got to put them on notice. You could put them on notice, but you better have some private stuff in place first. That's the issue. Individuals don't have private contracts in place first. Contract law is not treaty law. You can look that up. My mentor told me don't even come into class if you don't understand that. He told me don't come at him with that. I said, okay, I'm done. And I'm not going to come at you with treaty. Why? It doesn't benefit. It's about contracts. Everything's based off the contract. Isn't the treaties even contracts? Well, let's go look at the treaties that these individuals supposedly upholding. So the treaties that they say they upholding, where are these people at that's successful in the contract? They took people's land, made them cede the land, say they ceding the land, which means they gave up the land. They ain't have a choice. And where those people at right now? That's all I'm saying is where's those people at? Where are they benefiting from that treaty? I don't care about that. I care about creating a contract. Like Noble Drew Ali said and all the rest of the great leaders, you got to do business in your new name. A name is an entity. So you can do business in a new name. Go create and do it privately now. Stop doing it publicly. And you don't need to tell everybody what you're doing. Do it privately. You don't need to tell them you're a part of this organization, that organization. Why? Because they're going to end up finding out and they're going to use it against you. Anything can and will be used against you. Period. Nothing else to talk about. Why you think those organizations got compromised? Because they were in the public. And then you start looking on the line of all these, now all you see, all these organizations, these large corporations, how can they get wealthy privately? Because they private. They not in the public. They tell you it's a privately owned corporation. They're private. So what you going to do? You going to stay in the public or you going to stay in the private? You got a choice. That's what it comes down to. And the way you maintain your privacy is by having private contracts in place. So I encourage you to go ahead. Yeah, if you want to do something privately, contact me at hfrmperiodvote@gmail.com privately. It's about maintaining privacy. We don't need to talk about everything, but one thing I know for sure is I'm doing this on the public radio network. Cool. The World Wide Web. That's how we all connected right now. We got people in the UK listening to this show right now live on YouTube. Shout out to y'all on the YouTube channel. Shout out to everybody that listens to this on the West Coast of Africa. There's people listening to this show through the World Wide Web. But guess what? I'm not giving away no playbook over the air. I'm letting you all know what you all hear on the public is the same thing that I'm talking about. I'm just making sure that you understand that the same people that are sitting in front of you talking about they not paying taxes. How can he say that with boldness to the people that he say he's defending as far as the tax base or any of them? Because they use blind trust. They're maintaining their privacy through private contracts. So he can tell you that. Why? Because he didn't tell you that you can't contract privately. He just said, well, in the public, there's got to be some type of tax base in the public, and that's what they're doing in the public. So that's what they're doing. They're creating some type of revenue for him to get a salary in the public and, for them to build some defense military and all this other stuff that they're doing in the public. That's it. But you don't have to participate. That's a choice. You're natural before you're legal. But hey, people want to deal in legal names. They want to own everything. Yeah, sounds good. So, thank you for calling in, sister. I appreciate you. I know it's still early out there on the West Coast, and I appreciate the sisters. I always love hearing the sisters call in because those are the mothers of our nation. And they need to take responsibility. 70% of our community is run by women. How is that? And we can't blame the brothers because they in jail. I'm not blaming nobody. We don't need to blame nobody. It's called take responsibility. In the private, we take responsibility. That's all we do. We don't need to play the blame game. Ain't nobody's fault but your own fault. And that's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow. Oh, we came from slavery. All this, that, and the third. Look, I understand. Don't think we can't talk about that privately. But when we in the public, we going to show face. We the best that ever did this. We the ones that brought them out of the dark ages. Let's not forget where these individuals came from. So, thank you for calling in, Mother of the Nations that we look to produce. Thank you. Peace and blessings to you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Gonna move on to the next caller. Always appreciate the sisters calling in live, the brothers calling in live. It's all love with Sharif Ali. I wouldn't even be out here if I didn't love y'all. Otherwise, I'd be like the other individuals that are maintaining their privacy the whole time. They ain't even thinking about y'all because they don't want no rats in the organization. Just like all the organizations that got compromised. They had rats in them. They had snakes in them because they ain't want to honor contracts. It's about honoring contracts. You could create your marriage contract just off of trust alone. That's what I'm doing. Gonna open up the line to the next caller. Sharif Ali. Welcome to thevault.com. Y'all can check out this episode. Y'all can check out the YouTube channel. We streaming live every week. If y'all got y'all internet, y'all want to pass it along. But we here in live in effect. 215-7059. You're on line with Sharif Ali. What's your name? Where you calling from? Peace. 215-705 now. You're on the line with Sharif Ali. What's your name? Where you calling from? Alrighty. Sometimes people got a delay. It's all good. Brothers and sisters, y'all can call into the number 424-222-5250 and y'all can press 1. Ask me a question. I'm probably going to go for about another, 18 minutes. Go for another 18 minutes, answer some questions. This is how you get your questions answered before you have to, donate and get a consultation. How about that? That's what's going on right now is I'm sharing, and I want y'all to make sure that y'all can get y'all questions answered on the line for free. Because the event is RSVP. So we're going to open up the next line, 478-1152. You're on the line with Sharif Ali. Welcome to the vault. Peace. What's your name? Where you calling from? Peace. That's great. Yeah. Well, like I said, definitely if you want to, get a part of the private community, you have to email us at hfrn.vault@gmail.com. And that's something where, we make it a point to maintain your privacy and our privacy. Brother, I don't want anything from y'all. See, that's the issue. Leaders be wanting stuff from people. I don't need nothing. Brother, whether y'all know it or not, I don't work a job. Yeah, I'm going to tell you straight up. If y'all looked at Sharif Ali every day, I'm not getting up. I ain't working no job because that's working for somebody else. I'm telling y'all straight up. When you get into the privacy, when you say, I want to get into the private community, you're not going to have a job. You're going to create a legacy. You're going to focus on your last name. That's a hard transition, too, for people to get because they think when they go into the private that they're going to have a job still. You can't have a job in the private because you're going to be using the social then. You can't have a social in the private. Public and private don't mix. So you get in contact with us, we'll maintain your privacy through and through. Natural man, not legal status. You know what I mean? And you get into it and you start using your creative abilities, man. Is it challenging? Man, life is a challenge, man. Ain't meant to be easy. If it was easy, you're going to be accepting government handouts and then you're going to be a part of that statistic where you dead or dead broke and the other ones that's living off welfare when they do get to that age. That's what happens. Go ahead. Oh, great. Great. Okay. Oh, it is. Oh, it is. It is. The EIN is just a number to utilize in commerce. When you're dealing with the SS4 and you're saying, hey, I'm applying for EIN, there's reasons why you're getting an EIN, and one of them is for banking purposes. So sometimes it's just to maintain a bank account. So like I say, large corporations will have a bank account. That don't mean they paying taxes on it. They just got a bank account and the money's going in the private bank account because it's a private entity. Oh, well, okay, so you got to remember, are you in a position of control or are you in a position of ownership? The question is are you in a position of ownership? If you don't own the money that's coming into the bank account, sign on as the signer. Why do you have to sign on as the signer? You have to sign on as the signer because they need someone to have liability. And the legal fiction is a legal fiction. It doesn't have the liability is to a degree falls on it. But remember, if you got a bank account, who's gonna stop the entity from writing bad checks? You are. So if you write bad checks, you got a bond number. That's what the social is. It's a bond number. It's a number that says if you do something wrong, we gonna come after you. That's what they got to do. Everything has to be tracked in commerce. So they don't allow natural people to be in commerce. They allow entities to be in commerce. So they have to have some level of insurance. And that's a level of insurance. But all you got to do is make it explicitly stated, look, I'm not the owner of this money. Are we clear on that? Yeah. Then cool, I'll give you whatever piece of information you want on the public side. Why? Because I don't own it. Do you own the social security number? Can you tell me that right now? Thank you. You ain't create the social. How you own the social if you ain't created? So it's not about you owning the social. It's about, say that again. Say that again. Yeah, you request it. You don't create it. It's not a creation. Remember, and even if someone created it, who created that? You didn't create the EIN. You know, it's not about you creating the EIN. Remember, it's not about owning anything. It's just about control. Who is held liable for anything? That's the only thing I'll be thinking about. It's the only thing you should be thinking about is who is going to be held liable for this situation. Now, on the back end of that, you are held liable for your decisions and your actions, which is perfectly fine. You should not be writing bad checks on behalf of the company, talking about some, oh yeah, well, the company, it's $1 million company, for whatever reason you saying it is, and then on the back end of that, you know, you're gonna start writing bad checks and then they start bouncing. Nah, that's liability right there. You putting the bank in a bad position. You putting people in bad positions. It's called acting honor at all times. That's the code we live by on the private side. When you get into the privacy, you start acting in honor, man. That's what I love about the private side is that it fosters honorability. You don't need to come up with these tax schemes and tax. That's why Donald can tell you straight to your face, I don't own it. Straight up to your face. He tell you I don't pay taxes because I don't own it. He's being honorable. He's telling you the truth. But the thing about it is how is he controlling it? He's controlling it via trust. The trust is a legal person now. The trust to do the same thing you could do. So that's what's going to go out there and facilitate commerce for you. And when I say for you, that doesn't mean you still own it. You have to put yourself in the mind of, I am just a fiduciary. I am only signing as a fiduciary. Go look that up in the Black's Law Dictionary. I am a fiduciary. That's why the young lady said when she's signing as, you know, UCC 1-308, she's reserving her rights to just sign in the capacity of fiduciary. If she writes that down in a private contract with the private trust that she's always signing, whether she puts her name on behalf of the trust for different activities and she's signing as a fiduciary, that's what it's going to be known as. So she's reserving that right privately, and no state can impair the obligation of that right or that contract. That's the facts. But you got to have that expressed privately. And express means written on paper. See, brothers and sisters want to talk that good game. You know, oh, I'm going to talk on the air, you know, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to talk about it. No, brother. I don't like doing business with people that don't like dealing in contracts. Because it's two types of contract. It's many types of contracts, but they are expressed and then they're implied. Just like you said, I'm going to contact you in the private. That's implied. I'll hear from you when I hear from you. Express means it's written on paper and you actually did what you said you was going to do. There's some executive decisions that have been made. So it's executed or executory. That's it. Why we can't have contracts in place? That's how you make a man keep his word. That's how you make a woman keep their word. But for somebody, and I told you, it fosters transparency. That's the private side for you. It's honor on the private side. But for some odd reason, you know, brothers and sisters, they want to be snakes and weasels. That's all they want to do. I ain't doing business with nobody that ain't signing contracts. I promise you that. What do I need to do it for? That's what you get to a point in your life where you say, I'm not going to do business with you because you can't even keep your word and sign your name on this contract and say and do what you said you was going to do. Yeah, I respect my brothers and sisters for saying they going to do something, but why you can't sign your signature? That's spiritual. That's why they trying to avoid it. Because they know it got some level of significance to signing your name on a piece of paper and being significant. Because it's spiritual. That's why. They got to keep that internal law because it's spiritual. Private citizen status correction is spiritual. That's it, brother. You know, so, yeah, man, I look forward to connecting with you. Go ahead. Go ahead, man. Yeah, why not? I'm here for the people, man. This is why I'm here to answer questions. Correct. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, the UCC. This is what I'll say to you. If you gonna be in the private and you gonna maintain your privacy, you're right. You don't need to deal with the UCC. But most people, man, where the money at? Where the Federal Reserve notes, brother? Where they at? They in the public or the private? What you supposed to be getting? As the trustee of your trust, you are supposed to be the fiduciary. Your first responsibility is to grow the assets of the trust. Now, it doesn't always have to be Federal Reserve notes, but at the end of the day, that's what people be using to get, they call it money. That's what it is. All right then. So yeah, you can use the gold and the silver, no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to inhibit you growing, bro. You're supposed to have a diversified portfolio. You're supposed to have real estate. You might have some paper currency, because that's real. It's as real as me and you breathing right now. I don't like when people say things aren't real. It's like, how you going to say the Federal Reserve notes aren't real? That's insane. That helps me feed my family. And you best believe I'm not going to not get them. I'm getting it all. Because it's as real as the faith that me and you have that we can't even see. It's just a form and a medium of exchange. Get it right. That's all. So yes, if you need to go into the public, and like you say, if you need to go into the public and you dealing with Federal Reserve notes, those are public contracts. It says on there that it's a note. So why do you need to go to UCC? Because you need to know the law that's governing notes. It's public law for contracts. So that's why you got to read. That's why if you're going to be, private but still in the public, it goes hand in hand. When you hear a lot of brothers and sisters on the air talking about, oh yeah, the UCC is the UCC contract trust. I'm not going to go that deep with you until you ready to get there. But you need to know one thing. Trust is a contract and everything's a contract. So deal in contracts, no contracts first. That's all you got to do. No contracts first. Yeah. Right. All right. So no. So and this is like consultation status, which is perfectly fine. It's fine. It's still consultation status. But at the end of the day, I've done an episode about independent contractors. As an independent contractor, that means that they want a social or EIN. You want to operate from a private perspective. So that means you got to own nothing, control everything. If you got if you got a social, that means you own it. That's the facts. We can eliminate that. So you definitely want to put yourself in a position of an EIN. But if you're not ready to get a private trust established for yourself and be in that private realm and own nothing, control everything, then you might create what's considered a public corporation. So you have a public corporation, but you don't own that public corporation. Okay? And since you don't own that public corporation, then that EIN is going to go in place. So now the monies that's going from that company is going to your company, quote unquote. When I say your company, please understand the perspective I'm coming at it from. So it's going to the company that you're doing business with. Cool. So at the end of the day, the EIN, that's a whole nother different type of tax structure. I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm letting you know something you can go Google. So the entity that you're doing business with, say you go start a Georgia corporation. You said you in Georgia. So you go start that Georgia corporation. The Georgia corporation, yeah. So the Georgia, you got to go to the people and tell them, look, I need to update my tax forms. That's perfectly fine. Go update your tax forms as an independent contractor. Put the EIN, the name of the company, the EIN, and then it's not going to ask you for your name, but it's going to ask you for your name as far as like the signer, because you're the signer now. You're not the owner. A signer is not an owner. You gotta go once again. This is where your game gotta get up. You gotta read you gotta have the Black's Law Dictionary and you gotta have the UCC so you can be abreast of the terms, so you're not scared by the terms. A term shouldn't scare you. You should be prepared. So all you gotta do is just make sure you got the right term. Okay, I'm the signer. That doesn't mean I'm owner. And not only that, you can create a contract with the LLC, S Corp, or C Corp and say you are only acting as the signer when you do anything on behalf of the company. Now, this is another thing. At the end of the year, the company's going to get taxable for some monies, and it's going to have an owner. By then, you should have made enough money to get into a private vehicle at that point. You shouldn't be broke. You shouldn't be operating off bare minimums. So, yeah. But you got 12 months to fill out the tax form. You got 12 months. Every business gets the most at 12 months. And then you can do it quarterly if you want. But at the end of the day, you got 12 months to get yourself fully established as private if you're going to be operating that way. That's what I would say. But at the end of the day, that's up to you. You know what I mean? So you got that type of opportunity to go out and operate where you have a contract in place saying, okay, for this LLC, I'm just a member. I'm just a manager. I'm not the owner. I'm a manager. That's a contract that can be written. And if the IRS or anybody comes after you and says, well, what position or capacity you got in, you can have a notarized document saying that the document is legitimate, the LLC is legit, S Corp, C Corp is legit. And then on the back end of that, you can have a document in place saying, look, this is my operating agreement. That's something that we help brothers and sisters get, is an operating agreement. You got to have an operating agreement. And you go get that notarized. It's a legal document. Who's going to question whether you were in a position of just manager and that you're managing the company if it's legally notarized? Not too many people are going to do that. But if it ain't notarized, you might have an issue. Huh? What you say? Well, exactly. That's another question brothers and sisters ask me is, should you have the EIN registered with the state? Brother, when you start the LLC, S Corp, C Corp, that's on the state level. You have to get a federal EIN number. That's federal. Now, when it comes to the state, who asked you to get a state number? Who told you to get a state number? The bank ain't say that. The bank accepts federal EIN numbers. I've done it all the time. We help people all the time go in and use their federal EIN number for their LLC, S Corp, or C Corp, and go in there and open up a bank account. If you have an issue with that, you can get a consultation. Otherwise, you shouldn't have a problem with going down there with your LLC documents and the operating agreement, because you are going to have an operating agreement statement stating what position you're in. And once you go down there and you have your EIN for the bank is a state entity. They can't abridge they can't, stop you from doing business. Now, sometime when you get into some of these businesses, who? Yeah. They'll tell you go get the state number. I know reason why they might say that is because sometimes you might get into like licensing businesses like bar association member, like a food business. Sometime in the food business, you might have to have a license in food business. That's the facts. I'm not mad at that, brothers and sisters. It's a write-off. Go get it. Stop crying. Go get the federal and then go get the state number or the local number to distribute your food. Why? Because you need to have sanitary food. I'm not trying to eat from no place that ain't got no stamps in there talking about they serving good quality food and they ain't been checked. That's the facts, brother. I'm telling you straight up. So I'm cool with the business having a license to distribute sanitary food. That's real. So that with some businesses on sometime on a local level, you definitely might have to have a license, and that's perfectly fine. Why? It's a write-off for the company anyways. Go get the license. You know what I mean? For the business. But at the same time, the bank, first of all, he can't even give you legal advice. He's giving you legal advice to tell you go get a state control number. If you got asking one question, are you giving me legal advice? No? Then cool. I'm giving you this federal EIN. Does your bank have explicitly in writing that this federal EIN number is not allowed to be used as the number that can open up this bank account? That's it. And if he can't show that in writing, cool, I need to see your manager because you don't know what you're doing. You just got hired and you might need to get fired. Can't take no legal advice from somebody sitting in the bank. He got a job. You're an owner. Know who's the boss and act like it. Exactly. That's an issue we going through right now. Exactly. You're supposed to be a professional. You supposed to know entrepreneurship. That's why people got entrepreneurship schools. But at the end of the day, man, whatever. That's neither here nor there. You could read a book on entrepreneurship, dang near, and you'll be fine. It's just you getting out there and executing. Yeah. So All right. Appreciate you, brother. All right. Appreciate you, brother. Peace and blessings to you, man. All the best to you on your journey. Look forward to connecting with you and seeing you in the private, man. It's a beautiful thing. It's like all dogs go to heaven. You know, you start seeing the homies that told you they was gonna be there with you, and they there with you now. The women and the men. It's like the ones that wanted to step up and have a level of nobility and character and honor. You know, and that's what it's about. Like I told you, if somebody could sit in front of you and tell you they ain't paying taxes, they got a level of honor then. Period. He got honor. People want to knock him, but whatever. He told you the truth. While the rest of the other party sitting there telling you we going to lower it or make it higher for whatever party, knowing good and daggone well all of them got blind trust that you can Google and find out that that's a favorable entity for politicians to be using. So peace and blessing to you, brother. Look forward to hearing from you. All right, brothers and sisters, I'm going to take one more call. And then I'm gonna wrap up this episode. I encourage you all to share this with the family, because this is family information. Private is family, so look forward to connecting with you all in the private. You can make it out. We got brother Taj coming through. We got Yusuf. We got Sodell. We're bringing you the best, brothers and sisters, at the ones that's at least in the public, wanting to go over what needs to be gone over. I know that in the public it says own a business, own some business. No. That's not the right information. It's called own nothing, control everything. You can still maintain a position of control in your company and not own it, because ownership equals liability. So we're going to open it up to one more call, 650-3356. Peace. You're on the line with Sharif Ali. Once again, go ahead. Exactly. That's why the private that's why the private is so important. Your question is how do you protect yourself from public injuries, and you want to maintain your private citizen status? You have to have private contracts in place that basically are allowing, quote unquote, a fiction to be in the public for you. It's like starting a game of Monopoly. You ain't moving your finger on the board. You have a piece. So your private, quote unquote, person, your natural person, has to have a contract with a public, quote unquote, person. Public not necessarily meaning it's under their jurisdiction completely, but it's something that utilizes their public laws to operate. So when you're in the public, you have a private entity. You have a public entity. So your private person can have a contract with a public person, and you know who that public person is. It's the social security number. So it has a contract with that social security number and that person, and now you can go out, and if something happens, this is where we get into tort law, sister. This ain't just about suing people. You were Googling tort law today? Oh, yeah, it's about torts at that level, because that means that a private obligation or a private right is being infringed upon. That's private, but it has to be a contract in place first. It has to be, and it has to be a private contract. Now, you say, well, do I need to bring out my private contract into the public? No, when you get into the private community and the private information, you can create short forms. You can create a paraphrase of the document, and you go get that notarized. They don't need to see your entire document. That's why you only see part of private trust. You don't see the entire thing, because it wouldn't be private if it was in the public. So what you see is parts of the private contracts in the public. And so that's what you would be enforcing, is the private contract that's been, notarized in the public and whatever. And now you can enforce that, because who's going to say that that's not true? That's an affidavit. It has to be rebutted. And most of the time, no one's going to rebut it. So, you got to have private contracts in place. That's the main thing, so you can enforce it in the public. That's all. Yeah. Yo, you're welcome. Appreciate you calling in from LA again. Sister Terry? Tara, excuse me. Beautiful name, Tara. Thank you for calling in, sister. I appreciate you. I look forward to hearing from you in the future and connecting with you. And, peace to you. Thank you so much. You too. Thank you. So, once again, brothers and sisters, a lot of brothers and sisters, I have an issue with disability and this, that, and the third. This is the issue. Are you public or are you private? You, the flesh and blood being, you're private. The numbers that you're dealing with, the legal fiction that's in all caps on the paper, that's your legal fiction. That's your monopoly piece. Do you have a contract with that entity? Most people don't. Once you understand your position and then the position of the entity that you're using, because it's got to be an entity. That's why it's got a number, because if you were going to do business with another entity, you would have to have a whole separate of a number. The issue is do you own it, though, or do you control it? You know you don't own it. You always should be saying that. I don't own it. I don't own it. I control it. And that's perfectly fine, because anything you say can and will be used against you. So if you don't own it, you got to tell them that. I don't own this entity. It's written on paper that I'm controlling it as the controller, as the trustee, or whatever position you're looking to be in of control, and move forward. It's just that simple. But you know that piece, it ain't you. That piece is a separate entity. That's a separate legal entity. That's why they call it a legal person, a legal name. A name is a corporation, trust, a partnership, association. Look it up in the Black's Law Dictionary. I look forward to hearing from you all, seeing you all on this journey. I do this for the family and anybody that wants to take themselves to the next level as far as privacy, because that's what it's all about. So, peace to the gods, peace to the mothers and fathers of civilization. I look forward to connecting with you all and building with you all in the private and doing our best that we possibly can do to really just rebuild our communities, brothers and sisters. Y'all think these rich people that's in the public is doing well. How they doing well and they all public? How they doing well? Why you think Wesley got his estate ripped apart? Why you think all of the rest of the late greats get their estate ripped apart? Lauryn Hill get their estate ripped apart? Because they got public entities. They didn't have privacy. That's why I'm talking about it. Because you can have all the money in the world. It's not about how much you make. It's about how much you keep. If you don't own it, then you're not liable. It's about keeping the money. There's a system. There's a structure you have to have in place. That's what we help our brothers and sisters build. So, peace to you all. Tune in to High Frequency Radio Network. Go to the PDF section on the website. Go to welcometothevault.com website. Look at the past episodes. Connect with Sharif Ali on Facebook. You can subscribe to the YouTube page so y'all can listen live over to YouTube. If you all want to listen to the show every week and ask questions, it's 424-222-5250. I look forward to bringing y'all the best because that's all y'all deserve.